Hi everybody, I'm Joyce Campbell. I assume that you're there. I can't actually see you. I'm quite used to doing Zoom now that we're in our COVID world, but not without an audience. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I'm here today to talk about Postgraduate Week, to talk about Elam's postgraduate programs, and to answer any of your questions. So I'm just going to give a very straightforward introduction to the program and talk a little bit about my own postgraduate journey, because I am still a postgraduate student as we speak. And then I will open the floor up to questions. I want you to know that we have Tom Owen here from the Student Centre in the background. You won't be able to see him, but he is actually supporting me and participating in this Zoom session so that you can get really technical advice on applying for the program, because I am an associate professor at the Elam School of Fine Arts. I'm an artist, I'm a student, but I am not probably the top-notch administrator that you need to talk to in order to make sure that all of your own prerequisites and requirements are being met in terms of admission and your own postgraduate journey. That is all of that administrative and progression data is handled by our Creative Arts and Industries Faculty Student Centre, and Tom Owen, as the leader of that centre, is an astonishing font of knowledge on how our programs operate and how you might best find your way into them and through them. So I always defer to him on technicality. So if you have those questions, we'll answer them together at the end. Okay, so welcome. I'm just going to start this PowerPoint. Firstly, I'm Joyce. I teach on the postgraduate program, and I have some oversight over Elam's broader postgraduate program. I am a supervisor in the master's program, but I'm also a doctoral student. I'm very, very close, I hope, fingers crossed, to completing my PhD in creative practice. I'm due to finish up over the summer break. It's been a really long journey for me because I am a half-time student. I work full-time at Elam. I have children and I study simultaneously. That's one of the things that we can talk about and discuss in terms of your postgraduate journey, is how to sort of manage the multiple roles that most of us fulfill as students and as workers and as parents and all those things, and how to sort of manage your time as a student. One of the things that Elam offers is part-time study, and it's a very, very useful thing to sort of have in your back pocket, even to shift into at certain times during your postgraduate journey, in order to maintain your other responsibilities. So when I chose this image for my postgraduate journey of my own, I chose something tumultuous and scratchy and intense, this image of a raging waterfall, because it has been quite a tumultuous journey for me. It's kind of started and stopped. I did my undergraduate degree at Canterbury in the early 1990s, and then went back to postgraduate study to do my MFA at Elam. I spent some of my master's degree actually as an exchange student in the United States, and I suspect that would not really be a plausible option at the moment because of the structure and length of our new postgraduate courses, but that led me into a marriage and to an American and to a life in the United States for a number of years before I came back to New Zealand. When I came back to Auckland and began teaching at Elam, I thought at that point about returning to postgraduate study, and that's when I started considering the idea of doctoral study. For me, postgraduate study is something that I do periodically in my life. I return to study to sort of reset intellectually. I actually really like to write, I like to think, I like to read. I'm getting quite tired of it now because I'm really nearing the end, but in general, I'm somebody that likes to have this other aspect to my creative practice that isn't always making. So for me, my particular path which has had quite a balance between writing and making, has been an appropriate path for me. I have tended to take the postgraduate options that have had quite a heavy written component, but I've seen that for other people moving into postgraduate study and really, really honing in on their creative practice and their making has been the primary benefit. So that's one of the things we can discuss. And one of the things you would discuss with Tom and with any advisors at Elam if you were coming into the program, to what degree you're thinking about being a writer, to what degree you're thinking about being a maker, a curator, where your sort of creative energies reside and what the balance is that you would like to pursue. So that was my journey. I'm still in it. I'm very, very near the end, and that will be amazing. One of the things I'm looking forward to is actually being able to supervise doctoral candidates, which is something that I can't do while I'm still registered as a doctoral candidate myself. That is a conflict that I can't, it's a conflict of interest essentially. Okay, so let's have a look at what PG study looks like at Elam. One thing that I want to walk you through is just where you would be working as a student. What you can see here is one of our test spaces within the postgraduate area. It's just a great big beautiful light room that you can book out and set up work and explore and test things in that space. It's so anybody can use this space. It's just within our general studio structure. At the moment, all our postgraduates are in one building, and we've really set up an entire kind of vertical 4-story building to be completely sort of dedicated to postgraduate studies. So we have undergrad in one space and postgrad in another, and that houses all our honours, masters, PG dip and doctoral students in that space. So there's a real intensity to it, and it is also houses a lot of our workshop spaces. So these are just some images of the studios and some of the work that's been that is made in them. What you're seeing here is an end of year display. So that's when we take all the photographs within the spaces, and you're seeing the Elam Open Day. And hopefully some of you will have been to the Elam Open Day. I don't think, we are having one this year, but I think it's going to be late. It's going to be next year. Obviously we're working with a lot of COVID restrictions, and I can discuss those with you as well if you're interested in how that's impacting the program at the moment. So here you can see some painting, you can see some photography, you can see some sculptural practice, some video. We have a number of display spaces and a number of galleries. This is the George Fraser Gallery, which is in a partnership with Auckland City. It has 2 spaces in it. It's a very nice space to set up often group exhibitions, and students will often, we have a system where students can put in proposals for spaces and then explore having a public practice in that way. This is our project space, which is in our main teaching building. It has professional lighting. It's a really clean space, and again, students will generally put in proposals for maybe 2 or 3 people to share the space during the year. Window gallery, that's at the Auckland University Library, and many of you will know the Gus Fisher Gallery, which we will occasionally have students and a lot of staff show in that space, and also it's one of our main teaching resources. So for example, as the program leader of the 3rd year undergraduate program, I will generally take my students to see each of the shows that they host there. This is my favorite thing about Elam, and really if you want to think about Elam as and why you would make the choice to study at Elam as opposed to any of the other art schools in New Zealand, I think the key attraction for me personally, beyond obviously the real historical depth and the depth of the teaching staff, is the fact that we are an interdisciplinary program. A lot of people find this confusing. They don't quite understand the transition that Elam made maybe 15 years ago to sort of give up the clear disciplinary spaces, the painting, the sculpture, the intermedia, the printmaking. But really that was a reflection of how we all work as artists, the fact that most of us work between disciplines ourselves. Most contemporary artists do tend to work between a number of disciplines. And basically what it set up was a situation in which every student that comes into the Elam program can make their own path through technically, and they can start to craft an area or a disciplinary area that is really their own uniquely. So as a student, what that means for you is that you have access to all the technical areas, and you can build relationships with any of our specialised technical staff. We will set you up within postgraduate study with a series of workshops in order to get you through any health and safety requirements and make sure that you know everybody. But beyond that, you as a postgraduate study have quite a lot of priority, and you simply make appointments with our technicians. They're free pretty much every afternoon, and you can just dive deep into any technicality you like. So what do we have going on? We have a very, very large print area. It's been in the last few years made much safer, much less about the acids and the caustic inks, and so it's had a sort of a bit of a green sweep, and it's a much more ecologically and health sensitive environment, but a very, very large area of printmaking. There's a lot of screen printing, but we can cover absolutely any aspect of printmaking. We have casting area, cast bronze, aluminium. We don't cast silver at the moment, but we can support silver production in tandem with local foundries. We also have one of the benefits of being at Elam is that we share technical facilities with the rest of our faculty, including all of the architecture technicians, and we have a silversmith working over in architecture. She does a lot of silversmithing, a lot of casting of small metal objects, a lot of foundry work with our students, a lot of beating metal, which I really love. So it's not just the on-site technicians, but also some people working over at Kai that you can make an arrangement with anybody that you like as a postgraduate student. We have a lot of video support. We have a lot of Blackmagic cameras, a really, really nice editing suite. We have a dedicated sound suite. We have a dedicated metal area, a dedicated wood area, and of late, and you can see here, Franca working in a dedicated ceramics area, which has been a really, really great addition in the last couple of years. We have a specialised publication technician, and we still have all our dark rooms. We have a small colour facility for hand printing colour work, and then we have a large centralised digital print facility, and all the computer labs, and a specialised lighting studio. A lot of cameras. So as a postgraduate student, you have access to all the top end cameras, which is exciting. There's a lot of gear. You can probably hear, I'm a maker, I'm a practitioner, I began my academic path in photography, in sculpture, but have kind of moved toward photography and video. So my undergraduate and master's degrees are in sculpture, and my postgraduate creative practices largely in film and video. So I tend to work through all of these areas. I sort of love it all. And to me, that is one of the most exciting things about working at a place like Elam. You can just get your hands dirty in all those different ways. There's a lot of analog to digital kind of crossover stuff going on at the moment too. So it's quite an exciting material moment. I wanted to introduce you to some of our staff and the wide variety of practice that they are involved in. Alex Monteith runs our master's program at the moment. She's a total action fanatic. She's an obsessive surfer. She loves motorbikes. And in this here, you can see her on a speedboat, zooming through the Milford Sound, and working with the New Zealand Army on a sort of epic, massive 3-channel video collaboration with the New Zealand Army and their helicopter crews. So that's one of my colleagues who I enjoy working with, who you are bound to encounter on the postgraduate program. You can see here James Cousins and Peter Robinson, almost looking like brothers. they are probably familiar to you if you're interested in this area. James is a painter. He works between abstraction and representation, and this very, very sort of delicate, quite technical interface between abstraction and representation. Works a lot with computers, but also very much by hand. Peter Robinson is probably one of the most well-known contemporary artists in New Zealand. He probably doesn't need an introduction, but he works right across painting and sculpture and tends to work a lot with our sculptors. I'm worried that my daughter is about to walk in the door right now. We're all working from home, obviously, with that curtain. I'm just going to keep moving down. This is work by Simon Ingram. Simon works a lot collaboratively. He works in robotics and with data, and he's collaborated quite a lot with people like Mark Sager, who's a virtual reality and artificial intelligence specialist. He works quite a lot with cosmology and that kind of information, and then he translates all of that into painting. So it's a really technical practice, very, very interesting practice. Fiona Jack has a really, really deep practice around social engagement. It's a highly politicized practice. She works a lot collaboratively. I'm so sorry, I just have to get the dog out of the room. That's thrown me for a loop, and she's very, very interested in ceramics. So she often collaborates with quite large groups of people on large public programs and collaborations. Sean Kerr is a programmer, works a lot of virtual reality, works a lot with robotics, and he's a very, very funny artist, often quite comical, highly sculptural. This is just a small smattering of the people I work with, but I just thought it would be worth introducing you to. Along with our permanent staff, we usually have several part-time staff working in specialised ways within the postgraduate program. Right now I'm working with Elvie McCree, who has a very, very interesting practice in textiles and ceremonial practice, and Jeremy Letanu. Both of those practitioners are working deeply with their Māori and Pacifica communities and have developed a very deep ceremonial practice, I would say, in particular in the case of Elvie. I work quite closely with both of them. What do classes and contact time look like? Usually postgraduate study, if you're in the master's program or the postgraduate diploma program, most of the delivery takes place on 1 day a week. The kind of intensive delivery at the moment is on a Wednesday. You can usually organise meetings with your own supervisor on different days than that, but there will be lecture series, workshops. By workshops, I mean kind of focused sessions where you can gain the facility to work in particular technical areas within the school, and visiting lectures, and most of the sort of general program delivery will take place on that 1 day a week. The studios are open all the time, and you can use the workshops at any time unless there is literally a conflicting commitment for the technician, which is seldom. Okay, so let's talk about the different programs on offer. There is a postgraduate certificate in fine arts. What I can tell you now is that we have a really, really new program coming up. Okay, what you're seeing here is not actually on offer this year. This is the postgraduate program as we understand it from next year on. So we're going through quite the transition right now. The postgraduate certificate in fine arts is a new qualification. It hasn't been offered until this year. I think it's a very, very useful qualification. If some of you are coming from outside of the fine arts discipline, or you don't have a really, really clear academic path into fine arts, in other words, you don't have an undergraduate degree, the equivalent of the Elam undergraduate fine arts degree, then you may well be offered an entry point into postgraduate through something like a postgraduate certificate. That is a one semester program that essentially facilitates the transition from a different academic area, for example, a BA, into a fine arts degree. It will probably, in terms of admission, be supported by a portfolio of artwork. Tom and I can collaborate on answering questions about these programs at the end, because they are new programs and the technicality of admission is I'm not completely clear on it. I'm not the person that you would actually have those conversations with usually. But I can give you a little rundown on the reason that they've been inserted into our program. And one of the big things that we have found is that sometimes very talented artists don't have a particularly straightforward path into a postgraduate study in fine arts, because they've come to their creative practice outside of academia. So we've kind of set up multiple pathways into our program. The postgraduate diploma in fine arts is a 1-year 2-semester course. Masters of Fine Arts, our new masters, is 3 semesters, so it's actually shorter than it has been up until now. It is a 3-semester program, a 180-point program, and I will talk about how that breaks down in a minute. But what I can tell you is that we'll be offering both a taught and a research masters. So, which is to say, for creative practitioners with a clear research specialty, coming in, having artists that have been making art for their practice for years, they would probably go into our standard research masters, the kind of masters we have traditionally offered. But we are adding to that a taught masters, which we see fitting people that are really entering the field and are maybe looking for a masters that is really part of a broader upskilling for work. So that will take our students through a much more structured progression through different mediums. So we can talk again about that a bit more later on. The doc, we offer multiple postgraduate doctoral level pathways. So there's the Doctor of Fine Arts, the DocFA, the Doctor of Philosophy, and the Doctor of Philosophy with Creative Practice, which is the one I'm doing, which is the one I haven't yet finished. Essentially, these pathways can be differentiated by how much writing is involved and how much making is involved. So a DocFA is highly slanted toward making work in studio. And while we don't throw percentages around, you can essentially imagine spending about 80% of your time in studio and the other 20% of your time writing. And that is essentially the division of labour within a DocFA, something along those lines. A Doctor of Philosophy is a pure written degree, as I understand it, but a Doctor of Philosophy with Creative Practice involves a 60,000 word written document as a maximum, and a body of creative work. So a Doctor of Philosophy without Creative Practice, the maximum length document is 100,000 words. You can see a sort of relationship of scale in terms of how much time you spend in studio and how much time you spend writing within those different degrees. And the different master's pathways are really set up so that you can flow quite smoothly into the doctoral program. And this is the technicality. The postgraduate certificate in fine arts is 60 points and it's 1 semester. So you can come in and you can do that postgraduate certificate and then you can leave Elam with that certificate, but it will probably also offer you entry point into masters. And it's been designed as a gateway pathway for students that want to make that change. The postgraduate diploma in fine arts has been offered for a number of years. It's a 120-point program. Again, you can leave that postgraduate diploma, you can achieve that and go off and do what you want to do in your life, or you can use it as a gateway into the second year of your master's, a 1-year master's degree. So at that level, accelerates your process through masters. The MFA, we will have these 2 different pathways. So there's, it's 180 points, which is to say it's 3 semesters. So it's a 1.5 years of study. And the research and taught pathways are slightly different, but they do have, the first semester actually looks pretty similar. And in each case, students will be led through a theories of practice course where they'll really learn how to write about fine art. And understand the various dominant theories that inform the field. So that's something quite new, a much more structured approach to leading students into the written tasks at Elam, and a much more differentiated path through a couple of years. What I would point out is when I talk about a year and a half of study, you can in fact engage in part-time study. And I talked about that right up front. I myself am a part-time doctoral student. My academic responsibilities preclude me from being a full-time student. I have to be a part-time student. Obviously that stretches the degree out. And so for somebody that has a lot of life responsibilities or a lot of work responsibilities, this is a really viable option. What postgraduate study looks like for a part-time student is that you have just as much workshop access essentially. You have a slightly smaller studio space because we have to be careful about how we share our studio space equitably, but you have space in studio to work, and you stretch out your critique and meeting engagements with your supervisor over a long period of time. So essentially you can engage in study for twice the length of time and just kind of stretch out those one-on-one engagements with your lecturer. It's a very, very good way to achieve work-life balance for students that would otherwise not be able to take up study. I think for me, it's been a very good path. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of how much of your life this thing could take up, depending on whether you're sharing it with other activities. And what kind of work is made at Elam? I thought I might just take you quickly into the Elam artists page. Let me see if I messed this up. I messed this share up. I'm just going to screen share the Elam artists page so that you can take a little look at what kind of work is made at Elam. What I would suggest, it's incredibly varied, just like the contemporary art world itself, highly varied. Students essentially have the opportunity to completely dive into what creativity means for them, whether that's highly politicized or completely about abstraction, whether it's highly material, whether it's highly social. You really negotiate that yourself. You design your own research path, but you do that constantly supported by your relationship with your supervisor and the team of supervisors working around them. And what you'll see if you go to the site elamartists.ac.nz is all of the work that's come out of our honours and masters programs over the last 3 or 4 years, I think. And so the Elam artist page is something that the school provides, beautifully photographed end of year work that that sits on this page indefinitely as a sort of portal, and students can add to their own portals. But you here can just click in on any of these students and view their work and take a look at their ideas about art making. This is a student I worked with a couple of years ago, Christina Jeff. She's a fantastic photographer and filmmaker. And, you know, you can just keep viewing. There's, I think, hundreds of these pages by now. So you can take a good look at the different kinds of specialties that we offer, but just by going to that page. Sorry, I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. Where is my PowerPoint? Sorry, I'm taking a little bit of a glitch here while I try to find my PowerPoint. There we are. So yeah, go do your own research on that. That is a really, really great page. And For some reason, my PowerPoint is now not working. Oh, I think that's the end of the slideshow. That's why. So we're now open for questions. Thank you so much for attending. I am very, very happy to engage with you personally. You can email me at jo.campbell@auckland.ac.nz if you have any personal questions. I can lead you to the person that can answer them. But right now, it would be good to meet you, to answer any questions that you have, or to throw them over to Tom, who, as I say, has a more technical understanding of degree paths. Yeah. Oh, we have some questions. Okay, let's get into them. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing because I can't see the degree questions. Here we are. What's the workload like? Can I balance work commitments, family, and postgraduate study? Well, I do, sort of. The workload, if you went part-time, that would be a very easy question to answer, because that's quite precisely what part-time study is for. Certainly there are full-time students that have families and have a job. It very much depends, I think, how you manage your weekends, because in principle, this is a full-time program. We will have different sort of capacities and demands. I would come in and talk to somebody about whether part-time or full-time study was the right way to go forward, particularly if you had a full-time job. You'd have to obviously find a way to get that day of formal instruction cleared from work, but beyond that, it is really about your capacity to produce both the written and physical work. The written work, I think, if I'm correct, it's about a 6,000 or 8,000 word commitment in the first semester and around about 12,000 words across the next 2 semesters. So they're substantial but not enormous essays. And the making, we all know as artists that it's how long is a piece of string. It's really about getting that depth of engagement over time. One thing about Elam is it's a community. The thing you always, when I say that there's this idea of, you know, rejigging your creative practice or sort of restarting it, there's a really, really active community there. You just want to make sure you have enough time to spend time with the community of students you're going through with. That's quite an important aspect. Are there work opportunities available for postgraduate students at Elam? Certainly for doctoral students there are. The doctoral students tend to teach on the program and in some cases work in the technical areas. Less so for master's students, I would have to be realistic at the moment, because there is that demand for, you know, it's a major financial undertaking, and our doctoral students tend to be there for longer. One thing I would be very definitely look into is the scholarship options, because depending on your academic history before you arrived at Elam, or if you went through a few years ago, if you're coming in with an A average, you're pretty much guaranteed a doctoral scholarship. So those are substantial. They are enough to support you during your doctoral study, support one person at least. So definitely look into the doctoral scholarships, because if you have a high GPA, you may well find that without taking on extra work at Elam, you're paid through for your study. It's a very generous offering from the university. Is it possible to do university exchanges, transfers, or internships while studying the PhD? Whew, I am not sure. The PhD is that bit longer. As I said, I don't think it would be possible in a master's anymore to do what I did, which was go away for a year in the middle of my master's. It's simply too short. The 18 months wouldn't make that possible. The doctorate is a lot longer. I haven't seen it happen though. You can certainly go away. You can certainly you go through an application process to through the Graduate Centre to do research elsewhere. But whether that would be an exchange or a transfer, that's a technical question for Tom. So we'll throw that one over to him in a moment. What's the postgraduate student community like at Elam? Are there events to connect with other? Oh, absolutely. Yes, there are a lot of events, and it's a pretty tight-knit group of students. It has, you know, different tight-knit communities through it because it's quite large. I mean, we would have, I suspect, well over 100 postgraduate students at the moment. So the numbers are quite large, and it's a very different experience for doctoral students, I think, than for masters and honours students. The current honours crop are going through now, and that degree will not continue to be offered. So those students have been at Elam for 4 years. They have completely their own social world. The masters, and we can anticipate some students will be continuing through in that way, and they have created this, you know, very, very vibrant community. Master's students have a lot of access, a lot of time in the studio. My experience is that they spend a lot of time outside of studio together. There are obviously exhibition openings, sort of the key activity outside of, you know, school time that Elam puts on within our own programs. So they are usually very well attended. But I mean, more broadly, you're just, you know, hooking into the central Auckland art firmament, basically, when you enter. That's the main, I shouldn't say it's the main advantage of postgraduate study, because it seems to be like a side advantage, but essentially you are entering a community, and with all of the advantages of that. One of the things that I really emphasize to my students is that that community will tend to be the community you continue to work with for much of your creative life. The people that I went through both undergraduate and graduate school with are the people I still work with now. What kinds of exhibition opportunities are available for postgraduate students to showcase work within Elam and with external galleries? Oh, let's see. Well, we just had Eden Arts. We had a bunch of students in Eden Arts, the Eden Arts Awards, and one of our students was the, you know, the winner of that competition, as well as a bunch of them getting, there are a number of prizes in that. So that's one thing that just comes to us. We obviously have our open day, which is an open weekend that gets thousands of people through the school usually at the end of each postgraduate cycle. We have 2 galleries that are on a kind of a schedule of rolling exhibitions. The schedule's quite tight. It changes a little bit depending on the management. There's usually a student employed to manage the galleries, and the rollover is once every week or so. So there's that. Yeah, it's pretty lively. Beyond that, right now, if I go up onto K Road, I can find students from Elam at both Art Space and Totai. My students will go show work at the Audio Foundation, on. But those institutions are very hooked into Elam. Yeah. I think there's no open questions, so we might call it a day. Yeah. Hey, thanks so much for attending. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. I am, as I say, happy to connect with you via email if that's something that would be helpful. Yeah, thank you. jo.campbell@auckland.ac.nz. Okay, take care.